Welcome to this video overview of the genMDM editor. I'm 2XAA and I built this piece of software. Pretty nifty, huh? So the genMDM is a device which turns your Sega Mega Drive or Genesis into a MIDI controllable synthesizer. It uses both the FM sound chip, the 2612 Yamaha chip, and the programmable sound generator, which are both found within your Mega Drive or Genesis. The device itself was initially conceptualized and built by Little Scale, and now Cat Skull produces them on their shop, and you can buy them there. So you can go ahead, if you're following along, and connect up your genMDM to your Mega Drive. It needs to go into port 2, and you'll need to either connect MIDI DIN to your computer or MIDI USB. Doesn't really matter which. This editor will work with both, no problem. It's just MIDI. So to get started, we need to tell the editor which MIDI output to use to talk to the genMDM. If you've connected it via USB, you should have genMDM in your output list. If you don't, it might say something like Teensy or something else at least. So it will come up here. If you don't know which one it is, unplug your genMDM from your computer if you're using USB MIDI and plug it back in and see which of the output names change in this list. If you're using DIN MIDI, you might be using something like the MIDI Mate, which is a USB MIDI cable. So it's USB plugged into your computer and DIN on the other end. But we're using the USB MIDI from the genMDM. So we'll select that as our output, and now the editor can talk to our genMDM, which is talking to the Sega Genesis Mega Drive. Cool. So what next? Well, all of the operators are turned up to full when you open the editor. So there is no write back from the genMDM to the editor. So the editor doesn't know what state the genMDM is at any one time, which sounds bad, but it's not too bad. It just means that when we initially plug in our genMDM, turn it on, and the editor starts up, they're just in a different state. So really what you'd probably want to do is load a sound. So I'm going to click import TFI. TFI is a file format for like Sega Genesis sound instruments, I guess. So I'm going to load them up from my quick access here. So I'm going to go into bank 2. This is from the Yamaha, I think it's FB01. It's a bunch of like converted FM patches from Yamaha keyboards or synthesizers, I guess. And they've been converted to the TFI format, and they work fine with this editor. So now that we've got it in here, that's great. That has been loaded to the genMDM, and it's on channel 1. So now we need to play the sound. You can do this using... the nice thing about the genMDM is that you can plug in both DIN MIDI and USB MIDI, and they'll work at the same time. So you can use the editor via USB potentially, and then use an external tracker or keyboard plugged directly into the DIN MIDI if you want to do that, or you can route MIDI through the editor itself. So if you've got another device plugged into your computer or software rooted, you could select it from the MIDI input as long as it shows up in this list. So we want to select something other than the genMDM. There's nothing coming from the genMDM. We want to select something coming into the computer, which we can route to the genMDM. So I'm going to select my MIDI Mate here, which is plugged into a Roland PC 160 desktop keyboard, which is kind of nice. Got it quite cheap. It's just a standard MIDI controller. It's not too special. So now the MIDI notes from the keyboard are being routed through the editor, which are going to the genMDM, which is telling the Sega Mega Drive Genesis what to do. So and we've got nice velocity control on that piano as well. The piano sounds a little little crunchy when we hit it hard. So in the editor, there are a bunch of parameters which you can change. These are usually denoted by a little kind of north-south arrow indicator. If you can change the parameter, if it looks like a button, it's probably a button. Give it a click. If it looks like a label, it's just going to be a label. So yeah, this sounds a little bit harsh, a little bit spicy. So let's just turn down the total level slightly on this one and this one, and that sounds a bit more like a piano. But we can't do chords. So the genMDM has 6 channels of FM. So you can change that channel up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pretty neat. But the editor, so this is separate from the genMDM. The editor, if you're routing MIDI through the editor to the genMDM, can support 6-channel polyphony. So if we turn that on, I can play a C chord, but there's nothing happening on the other channels. That's because they haven't been initialized in the editor, and the genMDM is just not going to do anything because it doesn't have any data to play any sounds with. So now that I've turned polyphony on, let's import TFI again, and I'm just going to import the same up piano. Now that has now, well, it's changed my values back to what they were, but it has loaded that sound on all 6 of the channels. Very nice. So any import or load, I need to fix these labels, when polyphony is enabled, will load to all 6 channels at once. It will also affect all of the parameters for all 4 operators on all channels. So if, for example, I change the total level of OP2 and OP3, I can now go pretty ham on the keyboard, and that has changed all of the levels over all 6 channels here, and you can see that by moving the channel selector. Beautiful, lovely piano sound. So yeah, that's polyphony through the editor, and you can set the maximum number of channels as well. So the lowest is 2, maximum is 6. So you might have other instruments that you want to do, but maybe you only want chords happening, so you can just have 3-note chords, and have the other channels reserved for something else. Maybe you're able to split your keyboard up into different channels. That might be cool. Or maybe you're using an external sequencer like the M8 Tracker or LSDJ with an Arduino boy or something else. Anyway, that's polyphony. That's pretty nice. We've seen how to change the channel. If you roll over a lot of these labels, I've taken the documentation from the genMDM PDF and put that information on a lot of these values. There's one which I know which looks broken right now. I'm going to fix that later. But it tells you kind of what the value ranges are, which might be useful or might not be. It was kind of useful to me while developing this, but maybe not so much because a lot of these values are kind of abstracted now. But it tells you exactly what the value does, and that can be quite useful because some of these are kind of like, what does special mode mean? I have no idea. Read the label. So that's quite useful. What we can also look at is these global settings over here. Octave division changes the division of the octaves. So where you would have 12 notes, you could divide the octaves into 8 instead, and it changes the tuning of that octave as well, which is quite nice. The region tuning is for your region of your console. So I'm in the UK, so we've got PAL consoles here, so I've set this to PAL. But if your console is from America, say, North America, you might want to change that to NTSC because the clock speed is different and all of the tones will sound off, essentially. So if you're playing something and it doesn't sound right, maybe you've got it in the wrong region setting, and you can change that just by clicking. LFO enable is pretty neat. So you can turn this on, and that allows the AM LFO and the FM LFO to work. So you can change the level, which is quite neat, of both. Here, the FM LFO affects all operators at once, and the AM LFO affects only the operators with AM turned on. So let's demo this. So let's listen to. So that's the LFO enabled, but not assigned to anything yet. So let's turn up the FM LFO to the maximum 7. So you can hear that's greatly affected the pitch or the frequency. Great if you want to, like, you know, add a little bit of vibrato, or maybe, you know, like have like a kind of nice electric organ sound. In fact, let's grab a. We've got an organ here. Give me an organ. Yeah. Good sound, but could use some LFO. And you can control the LFO speed over here as well. Maximum is 7. So that's pretty nice. I'm going to switch back to the piano now because it's a little easier to hear what's going on. And I'll demo the LFO speed as well. So we'll turn that back up. So the maximum LFO speed kind of gets into sort of FM speeds, or kind of like audible speeds, I guess. Well, not audible, but kind of the maximum kind of gives it an extra sort of fuzz, essentially. Quite nice. So that's the FM LFO. The AM LFO level, we need to turn on AM. I'll just turn them on for all operators right now, but you can have just one on, or 3 or 2, or however many you'd like. And we can hear what that does. So I'll turn it all the way up. So it affects the amplitude, that's the A in AM. And it gives it I don't know, a nice kind of, you know, just a volume kind of tremolo. And again, if you turn it all the way up to 7, it kind of gets into that kind of high frequency mode. Ooh, 6 maybe? 6 sounds cool. So you can create some pretty nice sounds with that. So I'll turn the LFOs off for now. I mean, I'll just reset it all, why not? So that's pretty nice. You can change the FM algorithm here and the FM feedback. The FM feedback, you can see kind of like where it feeds back in these diagrams. These diagrams and pretty much all of the interface, apart from the dials here, were all taken from the YM2608 manual, which was for the longest time the closest manual we had to the YM2612, which is found in the Mega Drive to Genesis consoles, because there wasn't an official manual out there, as far as I know, at least. So from reading forums and stuff when I was developing this interface, yeah, the 2608 was the closest chip we had to the 2612, and a lot of its functionality was kind of derived from the second chip there. That's where all of these diagrams came from, and that's the inspiration of this editor. If you're on a light mode, a theme on your computer or device, or whatever you're using this on, this will have a white background and kind of black interface. But we're on a dark mode at the moment, so it looks like this. Sweet. So let's look at the pitch transposition. So the pitch transposition sets the global pitch offset, which could be useful if you need to change, like, middle C essentially to a different tone. You can use this, which is quite neat. You've got the pitch bend range. So I think it's default 2 or 3 maybe. So yeah, default's for 3. I should really add that in as 3. But you can kind of move it all the way up to 9, which is neat. So you can change the pitch bend or turn off entirely. And you can hear quite a lot of interference when I'm doing the pitch bend there. That's just part of the Sega Mega Drive and genMDM experience. Just embrace the noise. So we'll reset that to 3. By the time this video goes out, hopefully I will have updated that to default to 3. Voice 3 special mode. I haven't used this very much. I know it works because I have used it a little bit, but this does also mean a lot of work for, like, recording, so like changing the channels and stuff and changing the frequency. So I'm not going to get into this, but it is there, it's mapped correctly, and it does definitely work. So yeah, have fun with that if you want to use it. But that's a little bit out of scope for this video. The DAC control. So yeah, this is this awful rollover here. I need to update this with slightly less information. So if we turn this on, this enables channel 6. So I'll just turn poly off, go to channel 6. And this enables channel 6 to produce noise. Pitch noise as well, so change octave. Pretty nice. And then also, if you are in the higher octaves, even though in the genMDM manual it says C1 is a kick, it's not quite C1, it's somewhere, well, it starts from E and it's a higher octave, but it's got some built-in samples, some drums, so you got pretty nice. So it's E to A in some higher octave. I'm not entirely sure which one. Unfortunately, my desktop keyboard doesn't tell me which octave I'm in. But yeah, I can update this information when I have a look. Anyway, so you've got sample rate here, which changes the playback rate for the samples. So we'll just use the kick here. And you've got oversample, which changes the speed and the pitch. So sample rate, the higher this is, the slower the sample plays. But oversample will speed up how fast it plays through as well. So you can kind of get a nice bit crush. Oops, let's just turn. By extending the sample rate and then kind of speeding up through those samples as well. You can get a really, really nice bit crush effect through this. It's beautiful. The only thing I wish about the genMDM is if Little Scale had implemented custom samples onto the genMDM, that would have been perfect. But unfortunately, you're stuck with those. So it's still a really nice effect. Assign that to MIDI CC and you're golden. Lovely. And so the data value as well. So this changes the voltage of the DAC. Sounds scary. It's not. Don't worry. It's fine. But it... I have not been able to figure out what that actually does to the sound. But it's there, and it's mapped, and it works. So, well, I assume it works. I don't know what it does to the sound. But there you go. So that's the samples from some E to A, a few octaves up. And then we've got the noise / wave toggle. So by default, this is off, which is noise. In the lower octaves when you've enabled the DAC control on channel 6. And then if you turn it on, you get a custom waveform. Now this area here allows you to draw your custom waveform, so we can draw like a saw wave. Oh, we already had that. Great. Let's try some sort of triangle. Not really a triangle. Okay, we could add in a square if you wanted. Sort of a square. Oops. And it's kind of detuned as well, until you kind of get into the higher octaves. Yeah. Useful, maybe. If you want that kind of, I guess, early Atari sound. Yeah, you could also automate CC values, sending different custom waveforms and stuff, although you will get interference when it sends. The genMDM editor here only allows you to, it will only send the values that you've drawn in here once you release the mouse, just to prevent constant kind of writing to the genMDM, because there's quite a lot of kind of noise crackle, like kind of data sounds. I'm not explaining that very well, but if you write a lot of data to the genMDM, you hear it basically. You hear the Mega Drive kind of doing stuff. It's either the Mega Drive or the genMDM. I'm not entirely sure which is which, making the sounds, but yeah, it's too noisy really to be of use if you're kind of trying to modify the waveform with the mouse a lot. Anyway, it's not a great user experience, so turn that off for now. You know, if there's a demand for people wanting to edit the waveform real time with their mouse, then I can put an option in or something to change when it sends the waveform down. Yeah, so that's the DAC control. None of this works on channel 6, like none of the operator stuff works on channel 6. When the DAC control has been enabled, this takes over. If you are just playing around with this and you're like, oh, why is one of my sounds a bit strange, you know, in the polyphonic mode, for example, you might have left DAC control on, so just turn it off and it should be good. So the last area to look at here is patch management. There are a bunch of buttons here and this drop down. This drop down has 128 values, and this is for the genM format. The genM format allows you to have 128 sounds or patches stored in one place for kind of easy recall or easy grouping of stuff. So if we look at downloads, TFI with running names. So these are the so this was just downloaded off of Little Scale's site. He had some patches in genM format as examples on his blog. So I grabbed the Street Fighter special champion edit here and just load that. And so if we look into the drop down, we have a bunch of different TFI patches essentially. So there's only 39 in this file, but they can go all the way to 128. And just to note as well, you can have blank slots as well. So they will, you might have, you know, one patch at 128, for example, and one patch at 001. So just watch out for that. There might be more lurking later down the list. It doesn't truncate blank slots. So for example, let's look at Girls theme. So clicking a slot here won't load it. You need to use load and write slot to write back to a slot and load a slot. And you can export a new genM file from this slot list essentially once you're done. But let's just turn back on polyphony mode and yeah, load up Giles theme 11. Why not? Nice little trumpet, a horn. Again, so yeah, we click and then load, and then that loads in the new sample. Very nice. And yeah, so you can just load in whatever you want. Nice little harp. So yeah, you can easily load in a bunch of different stuff from a genM format file. It's pretty neat. You can load you can write back sounds to this as well. So so these slots will persist throughout loading and stuff. And if you import something, it kind of imports into the editor space first, and it won't write back to that slot until you click write slot. So for example, let's import our nice piano sound, and I'll just edit this back to where it sounds quite nice. That's good, I think. Yeah. So I can click write slot, and it will say instrument 39. It's 0 index, so it's 40 really, but it's because it's 0 minus 1. So instrument 39, there's no way to name these instruments in the editor right now. That's something that will probably come in future. There's a bit of space here, so not too bad. And then we can export the genM, and that has all of our slots filled out, essentially. Anyway, so that's the overview of the patch management. And yeah, you can export single TFIs from whatever's in the instrument editor here. It doesn't export from the slot, it exports from whatever's loaded in the instrument editor as you see it. So that's dependent on channel, that's dependent on what's happening here in front of your face. The slots are kind of like a save area, essentially. Like you can't save back to these unless you click write slot, and you can't load from these unless you click load slot, and they load into the editor. And it's the same deal with DMPs as well, which are definitely mask instrument formats. And the instrument format is only for the Sega Genesis instrument format for definitely mask files. If you try and load in another type of instrument, which is another system from the definitely mask instrument format, it will just do nothing, and it won't attempt to load. So that's that really. There's RAM load and save as well, but I haven't been able to get this to reliably work. So this, I would assume, is either broken on the genMDM, or somehow I'm not using the right MIDI command for this. I've had a go with the Max for Live tools that Little Scale released with the initial versions of genMDM, but I can't get those to work reliably either. The sounds usually sound kind of broken when I load them back. So it's either an issue with my version of genMDM maybe, or I'm just not using it right, or it doesn't do what I think it does, which I think it should just save them to RAM on the genMDM and then load them back pretty quick. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just using it wrong. But yeah, so this doesn't really work as intended yet. We'll see if we can get that working. Anyway, that's the overview. One last thing I think is this is open source and free on GitHub. So you can find it on github.com/2xaa/genMDM editor with a dash in between. You've got the permalink to the live site always on the GitHub repo, and the genMDM link is the genMDM editor link is 2xaa.github.com/genMDM-editor. And yeah, that's really it. It's open source and free, and if you've got any issues with this, like bugs or enhancements or anything which you might want to talk about project-wise about this, then stick them in here. Usability questions, just comment or tweet at me or something. It's not really something for GitHub. This is usually for like enhancements or bugs, that kind of discussion. If you're interested in helping me writing the wiki for this, or like a textual guide to go in the README, just to go over the editor bits, let me know. I'd love some help with that. And yeah, it's got automatic releasing as well, so you'll probably see the version number move quite fast if I change anything. And yeah, this is open source, and this has taken me quite some time to kind of get to be a usable thing with the genMDM, because of like some quirks between console versions and stuff, and I didn't really understand exactly what the genMDM was interfacing with, which was the YM2612. So I put quite a lot of time and effort to look into that, specifically the technical documentation for the YM2608. So yeah, if you find this useful and you do have a little bit of spare money, or would like to just donate something anyway, just because you think this is cool, there are some sponsor links on the GitHub. You can either sponsor me through GitHub. If you do, your donations will be doubled very kindly by GitHub, as I was one of the first few to get onto the GitHub sponsors platform. Or you can just PayPal me directly through this link here. That's not required to use the software. It is free completely, so you are not obliged to give me anything in return for using the software at all. So yeah, just in case you would like to support, then yeah, those are some ways you can do that. Anyway, yeah, so thanks for watching this video, and I hope it's useful. I definitely wanted this, and I hope you can use this with your genMDM and make some cool tunes. Thanks.